In this video, I'm going to be going over with you writing scientific reports. Now, that's a broad topic, and there are several subtopics that I want to go over in detail in this video. And hopefully, this video can be a helpful resource to you that you can refer back to as you are working on your report. If you need any help as you're working at home with setting things up or knowing what you need to write and that sort of thing. So, like I said, there's several things that I want to go over with you. The first of which is formatting, which we have talked about before, but I want to tell you a little bit more about MLA, APA, the scientific report format, and give you some examples of those. Okay, then I'm going to go over actually setting up your paper. Now that's going to include just your basic format, how to set it up in Word or Google Docs. I'm going to talk a little bit about the content of each section. Now you have handouts that go over that in more detail, and it is up to you to actually read and understand everything that's been given to you. If you have questions, it is up to you to come to me with your question. But I am going to kind of generally, in broad strokes, go over some of the content that is expected in each section. And then I do want to go over, this is kind of should be under the heading of format, but how you would actually insert a chart. Because your results section, you may need to actually chart some of the information that you've gathered in your experiment, and I want to show you how to do that and actually have it in your paper. And then the last thing I want to go over in this video is the references. How to set up the references page, how to create those citations, and how to put what is called an in-text citation actually in the body of your paper. Okay, so there's a lot to cover. This may be kind of a long video, but again, what I want this to be is a resource to you that you can refer back to, go to specific sections to watch them again, and really use this as a tool to help you write this paper and set up this paper. Okay, first off, I wanted to give you guys kind of a brief overview of some of the formatting styles. And I know I've mentioned this in class, and kind of the idea behind these styles is that there are these associations that have set up specific formatting specifications for publication of papers. Okay. The two that I personally am most familiar with is MLA and APA. MLA is pretty much every paper I've ever written in school because it's the humanities. That's your literature classes, English classes, even social studies. Those all those courses would be MLA. APA, I've only within the past year been exposed to APA. It is used in education and kind of the social sciences. And so MLA stands for Modern Language Association, APA stands for American Psychological Association. But what they are, MLA style, APA style, is just this set of specifications for how you format papers. Okay, there are some other styles. I know of Chicago style, I know of Turbine style. I don't know really how those are set up. I haven't had experience with those. For science and, scientific reports, I couldn't find a definitive style. I could be wrong. There could be something out there that I'm just not aware of. Again, I'm not a science teacher by trade. A lot of the science I've learned as I've taught it, and this is no exception. Based on what I've read about writing scientific reports, to me it looks like it's kind of a mix between MLA and APA. So the handout that I gave you in class, which is going to pull up here in a second, this and a few other sources is kind of what I've based my expectations for these scientific reports on, with a few adjustments that I've made just based on my preferences as a teacher. And that's the thing, that's part of education, especially when you get into college, is just managing the different styles, knowing how to set up papers, more importantly, knowing where to go to get the information on how to do it. Because there's so many details that you may or may not memorize everything there is to know. So you have to know where to go to find the information you need. And then also just being aware of if your teacher has specific preferences that may or may not fall in line with the style, but it's what he or she wants. And that's going to be kind of, if there's a few things I'll point out that I would like for you to do on this paper. I wanted to show you an example of MLA and of APA, just so you could kind of see what it looks like, see that there are differences. And then I'm going to use the APA paper to kind of move into setting up your paper. So you can kind of, again, see the differences, see the similarities, how the scientific style has some similarities with MLA, APA, and then we'll just kind of move on from there. Okay, so the example of MLA, I'm actually going to pull up here from Purdue Online Writing Lab. Okay, MLA, I mentioned in class, the title is not in bold. It's not formatted any differently. Everything is in Times New Roman 12-point font, double spaced. Okay, so MLA, you have this heading with name, not author, name, professor, class, date. You have a title, and then you have your paragraphs of information. Okay, in the upper right hand corner, you have your last name and the page number. And then there's some other section headings that I'm not really going to go over with you right now. And then the last page of your paper is the works cited page. And I mentioned in class that MLA is works cited, scientific is references. You see that there's a hanging indent, and I showed you in class how to do that. I'll be doing it again in this video. Okay, so that's MLA. APA, I'm going to just pull up a paper that I wrote last year. Okay, APA has a title page, which if you've read your packet over the scientific report, you know that you will have a title page. Set up a little bit differently, you'll see this title in the header that you do not have with your scientific report. You have an abstract. The scientific report abstract is single spaced. There are sections, but they are centered. And, well, the names of the sections are different as well. And then APA actually is also references. And you have hanging indent again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this paper and just change some things to kind of show you what it needs to be for your scientific report. Okay, so we are moving into now setting up your paper, and I'm just going to use a different paper that I have to kind of show you how to do that. Okay, so just as a reminder, Control A selects everything, and my paper is already set up this way, but I want to show you again that You're going to make everything Times New Roman, 12-point font. And I don't know why it's not staying there, but I know that there it is. Okay. And then for your paragraph settings, see, I have a different version of Word than the one we looked at in class. So sometimes you just kind of have to look around and find it, but this is the icon for spacing. You go to line spacing options. Line spacing is double. Before paragraphs is 0, after is 0. Don't add space between paragraphs of the same style, and you should be good to go there. Okay. My title page is missing some things that you will need for your title page. For your title page, you have an informative title, your full name, course number. That's kind of based on college, and college your classes have a number. So for this paper, you'll just put physical science. Then you put my name. This says your lab day and time. That's not really relevant to us. And then due date for the paper. So I'm going to leave my title the same. Actually, no, I'm not. Okay, do not title your paper this. We'll go over that a little bit more in a minute. Full name, course number. Okay, so I'm going to put a fake student name here. Course is physical science. If I could type, then it was instructor name, so that would be me. Lab day and time is irrelevant, and then due date for the paper is Friday, February, if I could spell, 23rd, 2018. Okay, so that's your title page. I told you that your section headings would be on the left margin and bold. Okay, and this guide tells you that all papers should be typed double-spaced except the abstract. Okay, so what I'm going to do, that is the wrong document, I'm going to highlight just the abstract and change it to single. Okay, so you will have to do that separately so that everything else is double spaced. Okay, the abstract is on a separate page, so my introduction should be on a different page, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in the left margin. Okay, let's see, we have introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion. So introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, and we'll just get rid of all this other stuff. And then your references is on a separate page. and we'll talk more about that later. Okay, yeah, so that's your paper. Oh, we're going to get rid of this heading. So let me tell you now what I want in your right-hand corner. Okay, how you get there is going to be to insert page number, top of page, header, right, okay, and then double click on it, and what you need to do is put your last name in front of the page number, hit space, page number, make sure that this is also Times New Roman 12-point font, and then you're done. Okay, you have to do page numbers by doing insert page number, because if you try to just type it by hand, so let's say you just typed 1 in the header, every page is going to say 1, and then when you go here and try to change it to 2, then all of your pages will say 2. Okay, so I need to change this header as well. Okay, so now all of my pages are going to have my last name and then the page number. Okay, now I do encourage you, obviously I had a paper already written that I could just kind of easily change things around to format it. Okay, you can set up your paper before you've written your paper, and I highly encourage you to do that. So if you've got a new document, go to Times New Roman 12-point font, set up your spacing to double, 0, 0, no extra space. Okay, insert page number, top, oh my word, I can't type tonight. Okay, select it, make that Times New Roman. Okay, and then you can go ahead and create a title page. Okay, you might not know the title of your paper yet, so you can just kind of put fill in the blank, fill in later with title, and then you have your name. Put your name. That's not where your name goes. I've already forgotten. No, it is where it goes. I can't keep this stuff straight. I teach too many different things. Your name, physical science, my name, and then due date. Okay, and then go to a new page, and you can go ahead and set up those sections. Introduction, methods and materials, results, discussion, and then a new page for your references. And then as you write your paper, as you come up with what you need to do, you already have the setup, so you know you've got to have an introduction. When you're ready to write it, just go in that document that you already have set up, make sure it's not bold, and write your introduction here. Okay, so I would say go ahead and set up your paper ahead of time. Now, I do want to take a few moments to go over the content of your paper, what each of these sections should include. However, I'm not going to go over everything in extreme detail, and the reason for that is because you've been provided with plenty of information in the form of handouts, and it is your responsibility to read that and make sure you know what is expected. If you come to me with specific questions, I will be happy to help you, okay? But part of being a student, and especially as you get older, you have to take some responsibility for your own learning. You have to read what is assigned and be held accountable for it. So like I said, you've received multiple handouts that really go over in detail what each section should include. One of those was the packet from just the other day. General format for writing a scientific paper. That's the most recent packet that I've given you, and I've assigned this packet for homework for you to read over the whole thing. Okay. Previously, much earlier in the year, I gave you this information, and unfortunately it doesn't look exactly the same as the handout that I printed off for you, but you may remember, hopefully, this chart right here that kind of gives a really brief overview of what each section includes. So all of these handouts have come from websites, and I'll put the link to the website in the description of the video. But like I said, really quickly, I want to go over this, but you're really going to be held accountable for this information, okay? You must read it, follow the instructions. If you don't, you may get points counted off. You may lose some credit, so you need to really make sure that you are holding yourself accountable, taking responsibility, and reading over these handouts. Okay, the introduction is where you are going to state your hypothesis. That'll probably be the last thing. Another thing you'd need to include in the introduction is any background material that is particularly relevant to the experiment. So honestly, the introduction is probably where you're going to put most, if not all, of the information from your sources. Okay, so just kind of background information. What the experiment was, what scientific concepts or principles it relates to, what questions are you asking in your study, and just kind of, it's an introduction. It introduces your reader to the concepts, to the ideas, to the research that has been previously done, and then to your hypothesis. Okay. The materials and methods section details how you tested your hypothesis. Okay. So that is where you're going to write about the materials you used, the procedures you followed, how the actual experiment was done. Okay, so when you actually do your experiment at home, you need to keep records of the specifics, what you did, how you did it, what materials you used, and this would be where you would write about them in your paper. Okay, the results section is going to be data. Okay, so you're going to write about what happened, what you saw, what you found. Was your hypothesis correct or not? Your data should be presented in the body of the report and presented as tables or graphs. So you should have a paragraph or two or however many explaining your results, what you found, and then also have tables and charts or graphs or whatever. And we'll go over here in just a minute how to insert those graphs and tables. Okay? And then the discussion is kind of your conclusions. Okay? Implications. Okay, implications of your finding, potential limitations of your experimental design, whether the data you obtained supports your hypothesis. So I actually misspoke a minute ago. I said that would be in your results. So your results is just what happened, and then did the results support your hypothesis would be in the discussion. Okay. Can you draw any conclusions from your results? Have other experiments brought forth the same results? Were there any problems? Were there any experimental errors? Is there anything you can think of that went wrong that you might need to do differently if you were to do it again? Okay, so possible errors or biases. Okay, so just kind of a discussion of what you found. Okay, and then references we'll talk about separately. So now we need to talk a little bit about inserting charts into your paper. Because in the results section, as I just mentioned, there needs to be a written explanation, but there also needs to be some sort of chart or graph that is kind of a visual representation of the data you gathered, okay? Charts are usually the best way to organize data that's gathered in the experiment, but you do have to have that written explanation as well, okay? So this will be in the results section of your paper. So I'm going to show you some options that you have in Word as well as in Google Docs, which I forgot to do earlier when showing you how to format your paper. Google Docs isn't exactly like Microsoft Word, but you should be able to figure it out if you do decide you want to work with Google Docs. But as for charts in Word, let's see if I can find, here we go. Okay, so you've got your results section. Okay, anytime you want to insert something, you're going to go to Insert. Now, let's say you want to do a table. Okay, you have an option to create a table with as many rows and columns as you want. Okay, my dogs are barking at something. So let's just say you need a table, okay? And the thing is, and I'm happy to help you with this, but it's really going to be up to you to decide what to use in your paper, because as you'll see, there's options, and based on your experiment, there are different types of charts that you might want to use. Okay, so if there are several things that you need to record about your experiment, then maybe you would use a chart like this. Okay, if I can spell. Okay, so I'm thinking, like, for example, some of you are doing slime, and there's several characteristics that you may record about each slime that you create. Then maybe you would use a chart like this. Okay, and you would say whatever you need to say, put in whatever numbers you need to put in, whatever information goes in there, goes in there. Okay, and you can format this just like you can anything else. If you want things to be bold, if you want these to be bold and underlined, you can change the borders of things, all sorts of things that you can do there. Okay, so that's a chart, and maybe a chart works for you. If you don't have more than one characteristic, there's other things you can do. Well, in this, I keep calling it a chart. In Microsoft Word, it's a table. Okay, so charts, there's a ton of things you could do. You can do a bar chart, okay, columns. You could do a line graph. You can do a pie graph, okay, scatter plot. And it just really, you just have to think through, what is a bar chart, a column chart? What's a pie graph? Does the experiment that I did fit these these characteristics. Okay, so for whatever it is you're going to use, you click on it, and then a special window will pop up for how to create it. Okay, I will show you what that looks like as soon as it loads on my computer. Okay, yeah, so this could get icky. It comes up in Excel. You can rename things here. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. And then I'm trying to remember, I think if you just exit out, it creates it for you. Okay, and sometimes I've done this before. If you're not sure how it's going to come up on your paper, like if you weren't sure if the category was going to be across the bottom or across the top, then if you double click it, well, I thought it was going to go back into the Excel, but maybe not. Oh, wait a second. Format. Maybe? No. Chart design. Edit data in Excel. Okay, so that's where you would go if you need to change numbers. Okay, let's say this was 5, this was 5, this was 5, this was 5. Change your numbers. You X out, and your things are going to be different. Okay. Let's do columns. Okay, same thing. I believe that column A is X and across here is Y. Was that right? And here's the thing, if you don't have 3 things, okay, so let's say this is your trial 1, trial 2, 3, 4, and there's only one thing that you're testing for, or pieces of evidence and data that you have. That's how you would make just a basic chart instead of that bar chart rather than that cluster chart. Okay, so if this is something you're not used to doing, and obviously I'm not super used to doing it either, you kind of have to play with it a little bit. Okay, all the more reason to go ahead and get your experiment done so that you can think through how best to chart your data. Okay, but obviously there's a lot of options of what you can do, and I'd be happy to help you figure out what kind of chart you need to use. Okay, and help you work through putting it in your paper. Okay, but you have to have the experiment done first before you can start working on that. So just be aware of your time. And you might think about before you do the experiment what type of chart you would use, and then it'll just be figuring out how you want to do it, how to lay it out in this Excel spreadsheet so that it looks the way it should on your paper. Okay, so I almost forgot that I needed to show you how to insert charts or tables in Google Docs in case anyone wants to do that. And honestly, I've never done it in Google Docs. So we'll just see. If you're inserting something, always try insert, and I see here chart. Again, you have same options, bar, column, line. So if you click chart, okay, it's already there for you. Let's see, edit in Sheets, which is like the Google equivalent to Excel. So it's going to be the same thing. You can, change what it says, change your numbers. And let's see, to get out of it, did that update? Okay, so I think that changed it for me. Okay, so that's a chart. For a table, you also have that same, whoa, hello. For a table, kind of the same concept with choosing how many columns and rows you want, and then you can just type in your information there. Okay, so kind of the same concept here in Google Docs. And the last topic I want to talk about in this video are your references. Okay, and there's several things within that topic that I want to talk about. First, I want to show you again how to set up your references page, and then we need to talk about how to create the citations for that page. Okay, which will be using your sources, going back to your sources and finding specific information about the source to put on your reference page. And then we also need to talk about something called in-text citations, where you actually cite your source in the body of your paper. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, for the references page, we looked at this a little bit when we did our formatting. I'm going to have you do the references page a little bit different than how you did the sections in the body of the paper. Your other sections, the section heading was bold and against the left margin. I'm going to have you do the references page a little bit more like the Works Cited page that I told you about and showed you with MLA. So the name of the paper or the name of the section will be references. It needs to be centered but not bold. Okay, and this is also the page where each citation, each section of information about a source is should have hanging indent. Okay, and I showed you guys how to do this in class, but essentially you highlight your information, and I'll go ahead and make it not indented. So let's say your paper looks, your citations look like this. You're going to highlight them. Make sure that your ruler is there, view ruler, and then you're going to drag the bottom little arrow over 1/2 inch. Okay, and that creates the citations. Now on the packet that I gave you, I don't have the paper copy in front of me, so I'm not sure what page it is, but there's a section about references, there's a section about in-text citations, which we will come back to, and then it shows you the format, the information that you need to include for each type of source. Okay, so journal and magazine, books, book chapters, newspaper articles, but probably the thing you're going to use the most is sites on the internet. Okay, so what I've done to show you how you're going to create your citations is I've just copied and pasted this basic general format onto my document. And honestly, you could do the same thing. You could go to this website and just copy and paste the format onto your page. I'm going to get rid of these. And then you'll just need to pull up the sources that you used and try to find this information and then fill it in to this format. Okay, so just as an example, let's see if I still have it pulled up. Okay, I found a source about which metal best conducts electricity. Okay, so I'm just going to use this as an example. The first thing I'm looking for is an author, and unfortunately on web sources that is very rarely available. Okay, and this website is no exception. If there is something that is not available, you are just going to get rid of that piece and not put it there. Okay, date created or updated. Now sometimes that's not going to be there either. This time for this one it is. Okay, now personally, just because I'm used to MLA, I'm not a fan of the idea that this date is going to be first. But oh well. I guess that's how it's going to be on this format. Was it 18? Can't remember now. 16. 2016. Okay. So the next thing is title of the page, and it's italicized. So the title of the page was this question. What metal best conducts electricity? So I'm just filling in the information and using that format that was already given there for me. So if it's italicized on your paper, it's italicized when you fill in the information. If there's a period there, then you need to put the period there in your citation as well. Title of the complete site was All Metals Fabrication. So we're going to fill that in. Okay, this just means that it is an online source, so I'm going to leave that the same. Available, and it has full web address. So here is where you're going to do copy and paste. You're going to leave available there because that's just telling your reader of your paper, hey, here's where it's available. And then date accessed. Let me see what the formats for dates are. Okay. So month, day, year. And based on this formatting style, that's what it's going to look like. Okay, I'm going to backtrack on you a little bit here. The more I've thought about it, and looking ahead to doing your in-text citations, we really need to have an author. The date does not need to be the first thing in your citation. So what I'm going to have you do, the websites very rarely have the author listed, but in that spot where your citation form says to have the author with the last name first initial, if you can't find an author name, what I want you to put instead is whatever is the whoever holds the copyright for the page, and you'll have to go down to the bottom of the page. So this is the example I used earlier. Go down to the bottom of the page, and whoever holds the copyright is what you'll put for the author. So for this example that I did earlier, what I'm going to have first is All Metals Fabrication. And I know that means that's probably going to be listed more than once in the citation. and that's okay. I just want you to have something for the author instead of just starting with the date, and that will come in handy when we do our in-text citations. Okay. So again, just one last example. I'm not going to do this whole citation, but just to show you another web page, let's say this is your source. Okay. I'm scrolling through. I don't see an actual author, written by so-and-so. So I'm just going to scroll down to the very, very bottom of the page, and the copyright is held by Steve Spangler Science. So instead of doing last name, comma, first initial in this spot for author's name, I'm just going to put Steve Spangler Science. Okay, Steve Spangler Science is going to be in the citation again for title of the complete site, but that's okay. We need to have something in that author slot. Okay, when you have all of your citations done here on your references page, you need to put them in alphabetical order. And how you do that is you highlight all the citations, not references, not the title of the page. You're going to do this A to Z button. It needs to be paragraphs, text ascending. Click OK, and it puts it in alphabetical order for you. Okay, so the very last thing I need to go over with you in this video is in-text citations, which is a term that you may have not really heard before. So overall, the purpose of the references page and in-text citations is to give credit to the sources you use. Okay, so you're writing a paper and you gather information from other sources. You have to give credit to those sources. That is required because if you don't do it, it is considered plagiarism. Okay, so plagiarism, the definition of plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. Even if that is not your intent, even if you don't mean to do it, you're not purposefully doing it, if you don't have a references page or a works cited page, if you're doing MLA, if you don't have in-text citation, that's ultimately what you're doing. You've gathered information from another source, you haven't given credit to the source, so it's like taking those ideas and passing them off as your own. So you must have both a references page and in-text citations. Okay, so what are in-text citations? What do I mean by that? It means in the body of your paper, you have a reference. Okay, so your references page are references. You have quite a few pieces of information about the source. So in-text citations is just a shorter reference, just actually in the body of your paper. So here's an example. Okay, you're writing your paper, write, sentence, and then you write a sentence that includes information from your source. So you have the sentence. Before you put the period, in parentheses, you're going to put a piece of information that references your source, and then you're going to put a period. Okay, now what does this citation need to include? That's going to be different based on which style you use. Okay, so in reading, if you wrote a paper, your citation, your in-text citation, is going to look different than if you wrote a paper in APA format, which is going to look different if you your citations for a scientific report. So to know what to put, you're going to go back to your packet and I showed you that there's a section on in-text citations. Okay. All citations occur in the text in parentheses with the authors and date of publication. Okay. So, for example, you could have the author within the sentence. So, Steve Spangle's science shows that slime does blah blah blah. The only thing you would have in the parentheses is the date. Or you can just have your information and then have author date. Okay, now notice it's not the full date, it's just the year. Okay, so let me show you what this would look like in your paper. So, this source, All Metals Fabrication, and you've got January 28, 2016. I'm going to go up within my paper. You're probably going to have citations in your introduction, so I'll do it here. You know, you've got a sentence of introduction that doesn't have any information. You've got some other information in your second sentence that includes information that you found on your source. So, you have this sentence. It's got information. You, at the end of the sentence, are going to put All Metals Fabrication. You're going to take out the month and the day. You're going to have the year 2016, and then your period goes after the in-text citation. Okay, so I must see in-text citations in your paper. They have to be there. Okay, there needs to be in-text citations from all three of your sources, because the expectation is you got three sources that are valuable to you, that have information you need in order to write this paper. Okay, so within the body of your paper somewhere, I need to see all three sources. Okay, also, any time that you use information from that source, you need to have the citation. Okay, so let's say the next sentence is from a different source. You're going to go ahead and have that in-text citation. Let's say that this sentence was from Steve Spangler Science, and I didn't look for the date on that one. I'm just going to assume 2016. There you go. If the very next sentence is from another source, you have another in-text citation. Okay. If you have multiple sentences from All Metals Fabrication, let's say this sentence was from All Metals, this sentence was from All Metals, and this sentence was from All Metals. You don't have to put it at the end of every sentence if all the sentences are from the same source. Okay, you can just put it here at the end. Okay. So, to clarify, you need all three references from your references page cited in the text. All three of them must be there. They may be there more than once if you use that information multiple times. Okay? You might have a citation in your introduction. You might later have a citation in your discussion section. Okay? Anywhere you use information from your source, you need to have an in-text citation. Okay? Now here is a new idea. You need to have that in-text citation even if you do not quote directly from your text. Okay, so let's say this is Steve Spangle. The solution of school glue with borax and water produces a putty-like material that's elastic and flows very slowly. The glue is actually made of a polymer material. Okay, so let's use this information. You need to put information from the text in your own words. So I don't want to see any copy and pasting. The glue is actually made of a polymer material. Does not need to appear in those exact words in your paper. If it does, well, that's another issue that I don't necessarily want to cover with this paper. So we're just going to say it doesn't need to appear in the exact same form. You need to put it in your own words. And I have a way of checking whether you did or not. Okay. We have access to a resource that we can run student writing through and check to see if anything comes up that you used a source word for word. So you need to put this in your own words. So the glue used for slime is actually a polymer material, which means, and maybe you look in the dictionary for the definition of polymer. Okay, so it's in your own words, but you're still going to cite it because you didn't know that if you didn't have your source. Okay, that's the key, is that anything that you don't know without the help of that source, you need to give a citation for in your paper.